Hey, everybody, welcome in. I'm going to give it a minute or so for folks to keep on joining. But while we're waiting, let me know in the chat where you're calling in from. I'm in New York City. I know we got Brendan here in Maryland and Ari also in New York. So I'm curious where everyone's calling in from, and we'll get started in just a minute. See someone, Matthew's panicking from the UK. Why panic? Is that because we named the broadcast emergency broadcast or another reason? Yeah, okay. No need to worry. No need to worry. Seeing Oklahoma, Poland, Joshua from South Bend. I recognize you, of course. Paris. Awesome. Slovakia. All right, just gonna give it a few more seconds and then we'll get going. Also curious if anyone was at this webinar yesterday. We also had another emergency broadcast session. It's going to be mostly basically the same content, but I'm excited to hear some new questions and talk about some new stuff with y'all. So, all right, Patrick, I see you were here yesterday as well. You're in for a similar chat, but another chance to win some cool Kilo merch and credits. So, all right, I think we can get started. So, welcome everybody. I'm Brian. I'm a developer relations engineer here at Kilo, and we've got a lot to talk about today. We mentioned it yesterday in the webinar too, but there's big news. Grok Code Fast 1 is going paid this Friday. So XAI is ending what has been the longest free period for a production ready AI model ever. So what does this actually mean for Kilo users? Well, we've been saying it's a chance to try some more great new models because here's the thing, the model landscape has changed quite a bit since Grok went free back in August. We now have 4 free models in Kilo that are all high performers in their own right. We've got DevStrawl Small, DevStrawl 2, Mimo Flash or V2 Flash, and Gigapotato, which is a Kilo exclusive stealth model that released earlier or later last week. And if you also want, frontier level quality at a fraction of the cost of, some of the more renowned, frontier models, you've got Minimax M2.1, you got ZAI's GLM 4.7, which is new. And of course, Grok itself, which is still incredibly inexpensive and powerful, even at the paid pricing. So today, I want to walk through all these options, talk about what makes each one good for different use cases. And honestly, we're pretty excited about this moment because there's a lot of great new models out there and new free models in Kilo that a lot of people might not have discovered or tried if it weren't for Grok going paid. So we're excited for this transition and we're going to cover a few different topics here. I'm seeing some people in the chat. 5.2 Codex and Gemini 3 are my go-tos. We got Gigapotato or Grok Code. That's good to hear you're using Gigapotato. GLM7, Opus 4.5. Yeah, so a good mix there. All right, so what we're going to cover today is we'll talk about what's actually changing. We'll look at the real numbers about what Grok costs now. We'll go through your options, both free and paid, because there's a lot of good ones as I'm seeing in the chat. I'll show you some Kilo features that'll help you get the most out of your tokens. We've got Ari joining us again to talk about model freedom and why this moment is kind of a big deal for the industry. Then we've got Brendan, who people in the chat yesterday were calling the GOAT, and I can't argue, who's going to walk through how he vibe coded our kind of Grokko's paid survival news site called the Daily Token. And then I'm going to do a quick live demo where kind of an interactive thing with y'all in the audience where we can make some changes to our favorite demo game, Kilo Man, so you can see kind of some of these alternatives in action. And of course, we're giving away $50 in Kilo credits to 5 random attendees today and some cool new Kilo t-shirts, which I'll show you right now. So all you have to do to earn the $50 of Kilo credits or the t-shirt is ask a question in the questions tab of the chat. So you can do that at any point through the webinar. Feel free to start dropping your questions now, later, when we're doing the Q&A section. But that's all you have to do to become eligible to be picked for the credits of the shirt. Someone says, "Screw the credits, I want the shirt." Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. That's why we decided to spice it up a little bit with the shirt. Yeah, the shirt is exclusive, so that's almost makes it more interesting. Okay, so let's start with the facts, right? What's actually happening here? So as of this Friday, 2 days from now, January 24th, XAI is ending the free period for Grok Code Fast 1. So this has been the longest free period for any production ready AI model in history. So we're talking like months of unlimited access to a frontier quality model at zero cost. And the usage was insane. Over 700 billion tokens per month through Kilo alone. It's number one on Open Router, and it stayed at number one on the Kilo model leaderboard, which you can check out at kilo.ai/leaderboard. So that's how much people love this model. But it was always going to end at some point. No company can reasonably give away that much compute forever, right? But I think the fact that it lasted as long as it did, and that XAI was willing to make that investment to get developers like all of you using their model, says something about where the market is heading. And I want to be clear about something. This is XAI's decision, not Kilo's. We never mark up the price per token on what providers charge. We never have. When you use our Kilo gateway provider, you pay exactly what the model provider charges um, per token at no cost. So I think this is actually a perfect example of why we built Kilo the way we did, because Kilo is model agnostic. So when models change, Grok going paid, your workflow can stay the same. Your sessions, your context, your setup, all of that can stay exactly the same. You just pick a different model from the drop down when you need to. And I think the timing is kind of interesting, right? Because back when Grok first went free in August, there really weren't a lot of alternatives that hit that same niche, but the landscape has changed pretty dramatically since then. We've got DevStraw, we've got Mimo, we've got Gigapotato, Minimax, all free at times or very inexpensive and all very capable. And we've got other affordable options like GLM that are competing with these frontier models at a really small fraction of the cost. So yeah, Grok is going paid, but this should be less of a bummer moment and more of like a fun opportunity to try some new things and really dive into this new landscape of portfolio models, as we'll talk about with Ari later. And it's a time to stick with the models that you prefer for each job, right? Because Grok isn't going anywhere. The pricing's just changing. And from our research, most Grok users say that they're going to keep using it. So I'm actually curious if any of you have used Grok, if you plan to keep using it now that it's paid, because we surveyed about 1,300 people on how Grok Code Fast helped them. And of those respondents, 71% said that they're going to keep using it. And I think that's a testament to the fact that developers value speed and efficiency in certain parts of their workflow, and that choosing a model, a lightweight, lighter weight, faster, inexpensive model like Grok Code Fast 1 doesn't just happen because it's free, right? It happens because it fills a role in the development workflow. So yeah, I'm curious who here is going to keep using Grok Code when it goes paid. I'm seeing a lot of people say that they are part of that 71%. So someone's saying this is interesting. Lucas said Grok Code Fast when GPT 5.2 generates the prompt is awesome. So that's kind of an interesting use case that I haven't heard before, but that makes a lot of sense. Like having a frontier, better reasoning model generate the prompt and then having Grok Code or a lighter weight model do the implementation. That's really smart. All right, let's talk about. Oh, supposed to skip to that slide before. Let's talk about the numbers, right? Grok Code Fast 1 is now priced in Kilo and elsewhere at 20 cents per million input tokens, $1.50 per million output, and 2 cents per million cached input tokens. So those numbers by themselves like may not mean much to you other than just comparing them to the other numbers from other models, but there's kind of a difference between what a million tokens actually translates to in real usage versus these prices on a chart. So prices on a chart. So we did something kind of interesting. We analyzed about 7 million Grok Code Fast 1 requests across our gateway to see what people are actually paying in real world usage. And here's what we found. The average cost per request is about excuse me, the average cost per million tokens is actually only about 8 cents. So that's less than the 20 cents per million input that's recorded on their pricing chart. And the average cost per individual request was about $0.0064. So almost half a penny per request. And so, why is there such a big difference between the posted rates and what people actually pay? Well, there's a few reasons. First, when you're using an AI coding agent like Kilo, you're typically using a lot more input tokens than output tokens because you're sending in all your context, your code, and the system prompt and all those things. So 70% or more of your usage is typically input tokens, which are the cheaper token. Second, caching. So Kilo, the way AI coding agents work is they send a system prompt to the LLM, and that system prompt repeats a lot. So that it can be cached along with a lot of your other context. And cache tokens are way cheaper. So we're talking, 2 cents per million instead of 20, which is about ten times less. So when you put all that together, the actual cost of using Grok per million tokens is only about 8 cents, which is extremely inexpensive compared to some other, frontier models that Grok can almost compete with from a reasoning perspective. So let's put this in practical terms, right? We have an offer that when you top up $10 for the first time through our Kilo Gateway provider, you get an extra $20. So that's 30 total. And at those 8 cents per million usage rates that we're seeing, that's roughly about 375 million tokens worth, or roughly 4,700 requests. And for most people, that's weeks of coding, potentially months, depending on how heavily you use AI. And if you subscribe to Kilo Pass, which I'll show you what that is if you don't already know in a minute, you get an extra month of our 50% first month bonus. So that offer runs through the end of the day this upcoming Monday. If you don't already know what Kilo Pass is, it's basically a bonus program that rewards you for having a coding streak. So, for example, if you buy, and I'll just go ahead and actually show you this in the dashboard. So this is, my personal test account. You have the Kilo Pass here with different tiers. So, for example, if you buy the starter pass for $19 a month, you'll get $19 of Kilo credits, which, remember, Kilo credits buy you LLM usage at provider cost, so zero markup. You're basically just paying $19 for $19 worth of LLM usage. You'll get bonus credits after you've used the $19, which actually ramp up the longer you consecutively use Kilo. So if you have a month streak and it's calculated per month, by the end of a year, if you buy the baseline, you'll have a boost of 40% and you'll get, $67 of total boost credits. And right now, the promotion with Grok going paid is that on the first month, you always get a 50% boost credits, and now you get another month of that. I'm going through the chat real quick. Someone said, "Is there any reason why the boost credits aren't used first when they expire?" Well, I think it's just because the way a Kilo Pass works is you're buying $19 of credits off the bat, so it makes sense for those credits you buy to be used first, and it's a reward for having a coding streak, right? So you want to continue coding, and then you get rewarded the more you code. Um, Someone said, "What free models do you have that I can evaluate now that Grok is going paid?" We're going to talk about that shortly. So we've got a few options, but I'll show you all of them in a minute. All right, moving on. So now let's compare. So this is the Kilo Pass offer again. 2 months of the 50% bonus ends Monday, 26th. Let's compare this new pricing to some of the other popular models like Claude, Sonnet, and Opus 4.5, which are two of the most acclaimed models in terms of capability. And just a shout out, we're also doing a webinar tomorrow with the Anthropic team on this exact subject. So we're going to sit down with the applied AI team at Anthropic at noon Eastern tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central European. And we're going to interview them about, how they think about Claude, Opus versus Sonnet, and some other interesting tidbits about Anthropic. So doing the same deal, $50 of credits to 5 people and 5 t-shirts. So definitely come through for that one tomorrow. I think it'll be really interesting. So There's Grok code fast one, 20 cents input, $1.50 output. And how this compares to Sonnet, well, it's like more than 10 times cheaper. It's about 15 times cheaper than Sonnet and even cheaper than Opus. And so when you think about that, like if it's 15 times cheaper than Sonnet, is it 15 times worse than Sonnet? Not even close. On SWE Bench Verified, which is a benchmark that determines models' ability to solve general coding problems. Claude Sonnet 4.5 scored 77% and Opus 80.9%, which are both incredible. But Grok Code Fast 1 scored 70.8%. So that's less than a 10 percentage point difference on one of the most important AI coding benchmarks for 15 times less money. So yeah, Grok isn't free anymore, but it's still really, really inexpensive. And for a lot of use cases, it might be, some of the best value you can get at that price. And going back to Nicholas's comment in the chat, what are your options now? Well, there's a few. And honestly, this is the fun part because I think there's a lot of good stuff out there right now. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the model landscape changes so rapidly. There's always a new frontier model. There's always a new cheap, free, inexpensive, lightweight, fast model coming out. And we kind of designed Kilo for that case, right? You can have all your setup and everything you like about your workflow doesn't have to change when you pick a different model from the model dropdown selector. So let's talk about the free models first. There are 4 that are free that are all, high performers. Someone said, where are the 2026 models? That's a good point. I'm certain that they're coming very soon. But yeah, it's probably like a holiday thing. The reason why there were so many in like early December, late November. So that's a good point. But free models, there's Giga Potato, which is a stealth model available exclusively in Kilo. We've been testing it internally. We've seen some user feedback on it, and everyone's really impressed. It's powerful, it's fast, and it's completely free in Kilo right now. So I can't reveal what lab is behind that, but I'll welcome your guesses in the chat. Then there's DevStrawl 2 and DevStrawl Small from Mistral. These are their dedicated coding models optimized, specifically for code generation and understanding. DevStrawl 2 in particular is excellent for day-to-day coding tasks and really solid for the price of $0. And then there's Mimo V2 Flash from Xiaomi. It's fast, it's capable, it's great for quick iterations and code reviews. So if you haven't tried that yet, definitely give it a shot. I see Damien's in the chat saying that Mimo V2 really isn't bad. I agree. So that's 4 free options right there. And we actually want your feedback on those. So we're going to try to figure out which one of these should be the new default free model once Grok officially goes paid. So let us know what you think, and we're happy to hear you out and pick whatever you all prefer. And then if you want to spend a little bit more money and get near frontier level quality, you've got even more options. Obviously, Grok Code Fast is still one of the best values in the market, as I mentioned, even at the paid pricing. And we talked about the math. It's about 15 times cheaper than Sonnet for comparable quality on a lot of tasks. There's Minimax M2.1, which is a personal favorite of mine at 27 cents per million input tokens. It's been getting a lot of attention because of how competitive it is with frontier models on practical coding benchmarks at a fraction of the cost and because of how fast it is. I've done a bunch of demos on our YouTube and webinars with using Minimax to do all sorts of things in Kilo's app builder and cloud agent. So check out those on our YouTube. There's GLM 4.7, which I'm hearing a lot of great things about from ZAI, which is at 40 cents per million input. So still extremely inexpensive. Open weight model with really strong agentic coding capabilities. So if you're doing, kind of multi-phase implementation tasks, this one handles them really well. And I actually just put out a video on our YouTube, and my colleague Darko wrote a great blog post on how to use your GLM subscription in Kilo to get 4.7 for like $3 a month. So go check that out if you haven't seen it already. There's Gemini 3 Flash at 50 cents per million input tokens. And this is a fun fact. It actually outperformed Gemini 3 on many benchmarks, and it's about a quarter of the cost of Gemini 3. So, there's some sentiment out there that cheaper equals worse, but I honestly don't think that's true. I think it's more about your use case and what you're trying to accomplish. Those benchmarks can tell kind of a story about what models are good at, but it really does come down to your own personal experience building with them. And I've seen a lot of people having a lot of success with Gemini 3 Flash. So, and then of course there's Haiku 4.5 at $1 per million, which gives you nearly Sonnet level performance at about a third of the cost and more than twice the speed. So the point is here is that you've got choices, right? You've got real choices and models that are better at different things. If you're doing a quick code review, maybe use a free model. Maybe if it's something that's maybe not that serious or for production yet, there's really not a reason to pay for that. If you're doing complex architecture work, that's probably worth spending a little more on maybe a frontier model like Opus or Gemini 3, just to make sure that your architecture is solid before you get to that implementation. If you're doing kind of a bunch of implementation bulk generating code, maybe Grok or one of the other affordable, fast, high performers like M2.1. So this is what model freedom really means. You pick the right tool for the job. And honestly, now's a great time to experiment and figure out which models work best for your workflow. And Kilo is kind of optimized for this generation we're in right now, where labs are putting out sort of portfolios of models that have different strengths instead of kind of a one size fits all model. All right. And now I want to talk a little bit. Oh, before we get to Ari, actually, I want to talk a little bit about some features in Kilo that can also help you manage costs, especially now that maybe if you're a Grok user, you're a little bit more conscious about token usage. So there's a lot of things in Kilo that you can kind of take advantage of to reduce your overall cost when doing agentic engineering. I'm just going to hop right over to Kilo and show you. So this is a little repo that has a Kilo Man game in it, and we'll show it later properly. Um, but the first thing that helps a lot and might feel a little obvious is that you can change models in the middle of a session, right? So you don't have to stick. I'm on Opus right now. If you can see here in the corner, you don't have to stick with Opus after you've done the initial architecture or design, and that's what you want to use it for. You can switch to a free or cheap model, like we'll switch to Mistral DevRel 2 while you're doing the implementation, while you're debugging. So it's the same session and the same context, but you can pick a more inexpensive model to do the things that don't require an expensive one. And some of these other tools where you're locked into a model, even when you're doing a simple little like UI fix, like maybe, I don't know, at the Kilo team, we all contribute to the landing page. If you're fixing like the text on a landing page, you don't need Opus to like change a paragraph of text. You want to use something free. And so you want to be able to switch to the appropriate model when you're doing that. Then there's parallel agents, and this one's a little bit more meta, but in both the IDE and the CLI, you can run multiple agents side by side without ever conflicting. So you can be working on a few things at once without waiting. And this is more about like time is money, right? If you want to do more in a shorter amount of time, because time is, everyone's most valuable asset, really. You can do that without sitting around and waiting while the model thinks. So just to show you how to do that real quick, if you go up to the Kilo extension on the top here, right next to the start new conversation button, there's an agent manager button. What that does is it opens a new agent on the side here and also shows your recent sessions in this repo, right? So you can kick off a session in the main window. You can jump over to this one in the agent manager. You can change the model. So you can actually use two different models in the different agents, which is a new feature. So shout out to Marius, Kilo engineer, who's owns this functionality. Did a webinar with him a couple weeks ago, so not sure if any of you saw that, but so this is even more of a token saving feature, really. If you're doing something really robust and reasoning exhaustive in this one, and you want to use Opus or Sonnet, and then you want to do some lighter weight implementation or debugging in this one, you can use a free model, and you can also switch from local, which just makes the changes right where you are, to work tree so that you can have no conflict, right? And if anyone's familiar with Git work trees, that's how you can work in parallel without conflicting with each other. So you can run multiple agents. They can do the same different things without conflicting. And you just pick the branch and send them off. All right. And then I kind of alluded to it already, but the next thing is someone said, I'm reading the chat here. So someone said the agent manager interface is only local agents, not related to the cloud agents. So right now, I'll get to that. I'll get to that actually. So the next thing I was going to talk about, which kind of relates to this, is Kilo sessions, right? So you can you have your sessions here, and what you can do is you can actually copy this. So you can say, I want to share a public screenshot, and then if we go back to the browser, it gives you a link that lets you, you can actually preview the session here. So you can see, I wanted to make the jumping higher last night for the player. You can open it in the CLI, VS Code, or Cloud Agents. And if we actually go back to our Kilo dashboard, all of our sessions populate here too, across all of the repos that we have connected to. And the way you connect, if you don't already know, to GitHub is just this integrations tab. It's like a 2-click connection to GitHub through the Kilo GitHub app. And then you have all your sessions here across all of the interfaces of Kilo, including Cloud Agents. So you can open any of these in Cloud Agents. So you continue in Cloud Agent here. You can also share with your teammates so they can take over they can fork it and take over the conversation with all the same context. And coming down the pipeline soon is a way to kick off Cloud Agents via webhook. So I think that kind of relates to the use case you're talking about, Patrick. There isn't an actual agent manager in Cloud Agents right now, but that webhook workflow will open up a lot of interesting use cases for programmatically spinning up Cloud Agents. So yeah, this the way this saves credits, going back to the original point of this segment, is that now you don't have to re-explain your context or get back on the same page with the model or with Kilo when you're switching interfaces, because switching interfaces is something that is part of a lot of people's workflows, especially if you're going from like the terminal to VS Code to Cloud Agents. You don't want to have to re-explain that context because that wastes a lot of credits. And now you don't have to do that because you can just transfer the commerce. You can just the sessions persist and you can pick it up in a different interface. The next one is just orchestrator mode. So this one might feel a little bit obvious, but it actually is a cost saving feature if you think about it, because typically before orchestrator, you'd have these different phases of engineering where you do the architecture, you write the implementation plan, then you do the code, then you debug all that stuff. With orchestrator mode, it does that all agentically, so you're not burning tokens on having to exchange those trade-offs with the agent. It just intelligently creates subtasks for you and handles all of that orchestration across the different modes. So instead of having a two-person conversation which wastes tokens both ways, you can kind of one-shot that whole experience with orchestrator. And then there's Memory Bank. So Memory Bank is a Kilo feature that externalizes your context and architectural decisions on your project so that you're not repeating yourself across different sessions. Similar in theory to the way that sessions saves tokens, but instead all Memory Bank is you have this Kilo code rules folder, and it's in our docs. If you go to kilo.ai/docs and you search memory bank, there's instructions on how to implement this. But all you really have to do is create this memory bank brief file here, which you can actually just have Kilo do for you if you want, which explains your project. And then as you go, so actually, sorry, after you do that, you go back to architect mode and you say implement memory bank. If you have that file, it'll know what to do, and I'll implement this memory bank so that whenever you have conversations with Kilo and make changes to your code, it'll intelligently update that context and basically this brief on your project so that you don't have to re-explain it, and so that Kilo has better and better context the more you work. So that's can save a lot of tokens in context as well. And for teams, we've got, if you're on an engineering team, we've got usage dashboards and model approval controls. So you can see exactly what's being spent and make sure people are being cost appropriate. And there's actually now in the organization dashboard an AI ROI dashboard. So I will show you that real quick as well. I have a lot of test trials here. But yeah, if we go to, where is it? Usage right here on the organization dashboard. I mean, this is a test org, so there's not much data, but you can see your AI adoption score, which is an algorithm that takes in like the frequency, how deeply AI is integrated in each coding session, the percentage of team members that are actually using it, and gives you these statistics, timeline, distribution over different periods of time. It tells you the average cost per request and all of that great stuff. So you can keep an eye on how you're actually spending your money and how efficient you are with AI coding. All right, I think that's enough of me yapping. And I think it's high time to bring on Ari, who is our one of our special guests and who does partnerships at Kilo. So Ari, if you want to hop on stage. Hey Ari, how are you?
Now it's working.
Yeah, nice. How's it going?
Great, great. Super interesting so far. Great questions, everybody.
Yeah, I know the chat's really active this session, which I love to see. We'll get around to all your questions soon. But yeah, I want to chat about I want to chat with you, particularly about like what this moment kind of means in the terms of the industry. Like Grok going paid feels like kind of a turning point, right? We've now seen the full cycle of a frontier model going from free to paid. So what does this tell us about how developers should think about model selection and model freedom going forward?
Yeah, I think it's really the release of Code Fast back in August was, I would say, around the time that a lot of parts of the industry were seeing a turning point of realizing that things really just were improving exponentially. Of course, we all know that
Yeah,
kind of when you look at the benchmarks and how things are improving, but then when you actually get to see and use the models, it's like, oh, wow, things really are getting better every month. And then it was like every week. And now
yeah,
it really since then, these last 3 months, it's felt a lot like it's every day or two. So, we're
totally.
trying to keep up with it at Kilo all the time. We try to give early access when we can to new models, but um, one of the offshoots of that whole progress has been that all of the labs seem to now be thinking about offering a full range of different models. Some that are maybe almost the same thing, but just one with super high reasoning, one that's really more just programmatic and pushing stuff out and pretty fast, and
Yeah.
also having a range of cost points for access.
Yeah, totally. And like obviously Anthropic is an example of that with Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus, like kind of different ranges of reasoning and speed and cost. So another thing that I kind of touched on earlier is that there's kind of this sentiment with some people that cheaper equals worse. But then if you look at like Gemini 3 Flash, how it outperforms Gemini 3 Pro in a lot of places, and some people have thoughts about Haiku 4.5, but in some of the benchmarks, it matches Sonnet performance at about a third of the price. So
Mm.
is the era of like you get what you pay for over, or like what kind of what's going on in terms of like cost versus performance?
Yeah, I think it comes back to it's really the discussion in the chat is totally right on. I mean, we're seeing a lot of developers and larger engineering orgs kind of develop their own workflows around using different models at different touch points. Maybe it's exactly just to generate a prompt, but a lot of times it's going deeper into like, you know, every time you need to do, hopefully it's not too often, like a major refactoring
Yeah,
project, understanding which models you want to use and to fuel that. But then it's starting to use different models even for different agents in the kind of like the same workflow seems to be the trend.
yeah. And can you maybe shed a little more light on like why a model lab would offer something for free, and also with Gigapotato, like why do they do stealth models? And it's great for our community, it's great for trying out
Mm.
new models, but like from the lab perspective, what's in it for them? I think a lot of people are curious about that.
Yeah, well, one thing is definitely when we get stealth access or really other partners in the space, they're typically finishing training the model before it goes live. So that's a big benefit for them. But the other one is really just there's no substitute for real world testing to see
Right.
how it's working with different front ends and different flows, and then making sure that in their own complicated, infrastructure, making sure that they actually have the GPU power to like keep things running and the right backups in place. So a lot of it's really just technical testing, and there's no way to do it without real data coming in.
No doubt. And then kind of looking ahead, like maybe 6 or 12 months, people have some wild theories out there. Like some people say, humans will never have to lift a finger again. Other people say it's going to be kind of more of the same. Like, I'm curious what trends you see in the model landscape or what you're watching for. Are there any like specific developments or insights from labs that could change, how we think about model selection or coding in general?
Well, I think, obviously at Kilo, we are dedicated to the open source community. We're totally open source. We kind of rely on contributions to keep improving things and also to help us extend in directions we might not have already thought of. And I think we're starting to see that same trend, not just with open source labs in China, but like also in the US. And we're going to have, even next week at Kilo, we're going to have a really, really exciting big release from a US-based lab. We are, what would I say? Like the other trend that we're seeing is, it's really back to that idea of people building out a full portfolio. And I think part of that is trying to get sort of into every touch point at a business.
Right.
It's the best way to put it.
Totally. Yeah, and then I guess more of like maybe the last question before we move on to Brendan is like, for someone who's been using one model for everything and maybe wants to start experimenting, like where do you suggest they start? Like if you were going to try 3 new models this week, what would you pick and why?
Yeah, from the overall usage data we're seeing, and also from my own, experience, mostly just doing front end stuff.
Yeah.
I think Anthropic is still really setting the benchmark. Like when it comes down to overall abilities, like Opus 4.5 is just amazing. And so I think start with that, probably Opus or Sonnet, and then pick a few others to play with and see what they can do. The same with Minimax M2.1. I think it's, we have it, it's still available for free powering Kilo for Slack, which is great. If people haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend doing it. It's really great. It works with lots of different repos at once. It's going to really like improve your workflows. But overall, Minimax, I think it actually performs better at actual coding than the benchmarks would suggest. And it already seems pretty good in the benchmarks.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of like my daily driver for like non, Claude and Gemini 3 models. But yeah, thanks so much, Ari. I really appreciate it. And yeah, as you mentioned, like we just released Kilo for Slack. So if you didn't see that, and if your org uses Slack, I think that's a really underrated feature. Like everyone at Kilo uses it daily, if not hourly. Basically, how it works is you can tag Kilo. It's like a bot in Slack. You can tag Kilo or DM it and have it do actual like engineering work and make actual changes in your code base right from Slack. And then it will spit out a PR with the changes. So for example, as I already said, we're not engineers, but we still contribute to like the landing page, to like the, different parts of the Kilo infrastructure via a lot of the times Kilo's Slack bot. Like you can just type, hey, make this landing page for this, or update this landing page with this text, and it will just do it, and it'll spit out the PR right in there in Slack. You never have to leave Slack. You can just go to the PR and merge it or do whatever you need to do with it. And you can also ask questions about your code base, or if there's a lot of moving parts at a lot of engineering orgs. If you have a question about the code or need some insights into something regarding your website or code base or whatever, you can just ask right in Slack with Kilo. It'll actually have access to your entire, GitHub repo database or GitHub repos and can spit that out for you. So
yeah, no,
really
great
fun.
point. It's really good at answering questions. Especially stuff like, right, for those of us more on the marketing side who want to say, where is the table that this data is coming from? And it will kind of go through everything and find it.
Yeah, I'm putting my email in the chat here. If anyone has any questions about Kilo for Slack or wants, a walkthrough, feel free to hit me up. All right, thanks so much, Ari. I really appreciate the time.
Yep, no problem. And everybody, look out for this big free model release we're doing next week. Definitely. I know we're saying lots of things to look out for, but this is a big one.
Yeah, there's a big new one coming next week, so stay tuned. We'll probably do a webinar on it if I had to guess, but thanks, Ari. All right, now we're gonna bring on everyone's favorite Kilo webinar host, Brendan. If you want to hop on stage, we got some like a lot of love for Brendan in the comments yesterday.
Hey, what's going on? I think I've got the going on.
All right,
Probably a little bit better. Okay, great.
okay. Yeah, so I wanted to chat about the daily token. If you just want to maybe share what it is and walk through it, and we can all have some fun with that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
It's something that has existed for a long time because we've kind of been anticipating this day for a while, right?
Yep.
That we do the free ride couldn't last forever, regardless of who's bankrolling the free ride. It can't last forever. And even if it's a pretty wealthy dude bankrolling it, it has to end at some point. So I had actually this whole thing vibe coded with Kilo and with Grok Code Fast as my model. And I gave it, some inspiration. It might look a little bit like satirical websites you've seen in the past. Any kind of connection to that, though, is probably just purely coincidental. And yeah, so it's a great. It's daily token dot. If you could drop the link, sorry, in
I got you.
in the chat, Brian, that'd be great. But it's dailytoken.kilo.ai. And it also features, I mean, the best part of the website is, to be fair, this video from Brian right here that he made of the breaking news of Kilo, or Grok Code going paid and how disruptive it's been. But not only did I have it make me this great website with some fantastic sponsors. You should check out Kilo Code. I hear they're great. And they sponsored the website too. I also had it vibe all of the like articles, right? Like a woman leaves husband after discovering he's been secretly using her credit card for Claude, or in a related post, Tinder profile says just looking for somebody with a Claude Code Pro account. Yeah, so it's great. And yeah, I just wanted to talk kind of about how maybe I did that. There's a changed up position out there. Oh wait, actually none of the vlogs are real. It's actually all about not panicking, and then go to this great resource that Ari helped us put together about models changing and great workflows don't, and all about model freedom and about the latest way to get free or very low cost inference. And so all the things that Brian talked about, you can get to from there. But I was actually looking at it, and through the beauty of Kilo Code, I can actually see it was 3 months ago that I made this, right? And I gave Grok a pretty generic prompt, but with some details about what I wanted, like the fact that we were going to have T-shirts to give away, and all that. And yeah, Grok Code did a great job. It didn't design the T-shirt, although I'm also wearing the T-shirt. I just wanted to point that out. I pointed it out yesterday on the thread. It says great models, or models change, but great workflows don't.
There it is.
Really excited to actually also finally be able to give these T-shirts out, because we've been having them. They're not sitting in my closet, but they're in somebody's closet and have been for a while, waiting for today. So it's real great. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to show off on here, Brian, or thoughts?
No, I mean that's all great. I'd love for you to stick around and we're gonna move into the Q&A and
Sure,
do a quick demo. But yeah, everyone check out the daily token. It's a lot of fun. Watch the video. Tell us what you think about it. And I want to jump into a quick live demo / Q&A because I know we're kind of going over time. Oh, that someone said my old personal website, that's pretty outdated, so I'm actually gonna have to update that because obviously I work at Kilo now. But if you're looking for my LinkedIn, I'll send it in the chat. That website hasn't been updated in like a year. That's funny that you found that though. Anyway, so I'm gonna share my screen. We're gonna do a quick demo, and I'm gonna open it up to the audience to help me decide what we're gonna do. So this is Kilo. This is the dashboard. It's Kilo Deploy. And if you don't already know, Kilo Deploy is one-click deployments right from the Kilo dashboard. So if you have an Next.js app in your GitHub repo that's connected, you can just click to deploy and basically do it in one click. And yesterday in this same session, it's funny, Brennan. I saw your comment in the chat. Kilo, can you update Brian's website? If this was Slack, it actually would too, which is funny. All right, so this is Kilo deploy, and I actually just realized I have to share my whole window. Excuse me. And I made this version of Kilo Man, which if you've been to any of my webinars, you already know that's the main demo that we always do, with Gigapotato, which is one of the free models in Kilo right now. It's the stealth model. And this one, actually, I made a joke yesterday that this one scared Ari. He said it was like the spookiest version of Kilo Man, and I kind of agree. It is a little bit spooky. And it also has like these flying enemies over here, which is like a new thing somewhere. But anyway, the audience yesterday suggested that we add projectiles to the character by pressing K. So we did that, and it's kind of like came up with this like ball pit style projectile which I think is like pretty cool. It has like gravity and like friction, and it like slows down and bounces around. Like I didn't tell it to add any of that stuff, but it did. So we're gonna go to Kilo Cloud Agents, and Kilo Cloud Agents is basically Kilo from the web. So you have like basically a full development environment right inside of the Kilo dashboard. You can select a repository. So this is like all my graveyard of demos across my webinars, but we'll go and select the Kiloman Giga Potato version. We'll go to code mode, and let's pick Giga Potato, obviously for the sake of this experiment. And I want to ask the audience, what's a feature that we should add to this version of Kiloman? And then we'll have Cloud Agents do that with Giga Potato. And I'm going to give it a second for people to start typing that in. I like double jumps. That's because honestly, the jump height is not high enough. So maybe we need a double jump.
Oh, or a jetpack.
Jetpack. That's pretty good. All right. We're already seeing some love for the jetpack. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. So we're going to say add a jetpack to the main, I think they call it a sprite, or I'll say the main player, so that holding down the jump key, how do I describe this? Propels him into the air for as long as you hold up the key. I'm going to just give it a guardrail and say this shouldn't change the existing normal jump functionality. Okay. With a tap. All right, so we have the prompt, we have the correct repository here, we have code mode selected, Giga Potato. If you wanted to, you could set environment variables and setup commands here, and you could even save those to a configuration profile, but we don't need to do that, so we're just going to go ahead and kick it off. And while this is working, we're going to go to the Q&A to be ultra efficient in parallel. So we're going to go to the questions tab, and while Cloud Agent gets working on that, we're going to start answering some live. And I'm just going to read through here.
You want me to kick off one, Brian?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So one was about having a global memory bank across all projects. And I don't think there is a global memory bank, but there is a global Kilo code folder for things like rules. And I guess you could, since it's just a rule, you could try it. I've never tried a global memory bank, but I do have some global rules that I've got set up. And so I was going to share the docs page on that. I'd be interested. I guess there's no reason you couldn't have a global memory bank. It just seems like to me the purpose of the memory bank is not necessarily is typically project specific.
Right.
And so that it doesn't necessarily jive in my mind. It's like, unless you're only ever working on, projects that are identical in purpose and technology and everything, I think a global rule is probably more what you're looking for there. So anyway, that was my thought on that one. And I just sent the link to where the global rules live in our docs.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like the point of the memory bank is to maintain your project context. So if you had it globally, it would become pretty conflicted, right? If you're working on different projects that have different use cases or solving different use cases, that wouldn't really make sense. So it's more to keep some memory and context from session to session within the same project. Okay, I'm browsing for some more questions. Okay, so I saw someone, Brendan already answered it, how to run multiple Kilo instances in VS Code. So that's kind of what we talked about earlier, right? If we go to Kilo and we click this agent manager button, you can run multiple instances of Kilo. You can choose to run them in parallel. You can use the Git work tree option. They both support images. You can even do, I didn't mention this earlier, but in the parallel agent instance, you can run multiple versions, right? You can run up to 4 versions of the same prompt. So if you're doing some like design stuff or, something that's maybe you're looking for a less deterministic result, you can do multiple versions and then just merge whichever one you like the best. So that's that.
Yeah, and I'll just note on that you have the model drop down in your agent. I think that's in dev only right now.
Oh.
And so I think it's coming soon. Folks were asking about
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But yeah, I was trying to get a good answer on that on Slack's parallel when I was asking. And I haven't seen an answer come in yet, but I think that just must be in the dev version of.
I actually think it's shipped. I think it shipped earlier this morning or last night.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's also possible it's shipped and it's like not. I haven't gotten the update yet, so
Anyway,
it's new. It's coming.
Yeah.
It's either here or very close to coming for those folks that were asking about that.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people were asking about that, in previous webinars too. So,
yep. And then someone asked if we expect Grok to stay in the top 5 model uses. That's a great question. And I would say that I cannot predict at all the future. And why is that? Well, it's because like back in when we were making this, right? You saw that like 3 months ago, I made the daily token. Grok was like 65% of our daily usage. And so we were like, well, this is existential when it goes paid. And obviously still we're treating it like an emergency, right? We had a couple of emergency broadcasts just about it. Because there are so many of our users that are using it, and a lot of folks that are very price sensitive. And so, I would say I'm not sure. I think that its speed is something that a lot of people value, but there's a lot of folks that use Kilo, right? Because we're open source, and they're price sensitive, right? They don't want to be locked in to these $200 a month, $200 a month subscriptions from some of the bigger players in the space. And so for that reason, I'd say I'm not sure. Like it's a cheap, fast model, so yes. But there's also a lot of folks that are going to be looking for like, okay, how can I use the latest and greatest free model instead? So it'll be really interesting to see. For those that don't know, you can see all of that for yourself in real time at kilo.ai/leaderboard. I shared that in this notes a little earlier, but we actually publish all this data to kilo.ai/leaderboard if you want to learn like what models are people using, what trends are we seeing. That's kind of how we're trying to like talk about real world usage of these tools, right? Like benchmarks are good. Benchmarks are something, and they can help. But I think it's the real world use and how developers are really using a tool like models that really tell a story that's a lot. That can be a lot different than benchmarks. So
totally. Yeah, let's see another one pop in. Yeah, I agree. And someone else asked, and I think you might have already answered it, but I just want to say for the people that are just listening, someone asked, how long do you suppose that this period of a free model popping up every other week to last? Because it looks like some of the enthusiasm is starting to fade already. Well, I would maybe challenge that a little bit because I think that we've seen like more free models coming up recently. And like Ari mentioned, the free model, the stealth model kind of play is really effective for gathering data, during a model launch or before a public model launch. And Kilo, because we have so many users that like rely on free and inexpensive models, and are able to switch models and try something new without it drastically changing their workflow is like a really important testing ground for a lot of these labs. So like in a large way, you all, the users, are like really pushing the development of these new models forward. And I think the free model thing is both a reward for that and an opportunity for them to make sure that they're, putting out the best stuff. So yeah, we'll see. I guess like Brendan said, we can't predict the future, but it does seem like it is mutually beneficial. The free model thing. I see someone said, if I look at artificial intelligence versus price comparison. Oh, another. All right, so we ran into a live demo
gremlin.
Yeah, that's what we're calling him now. So we timed out. That's my own fault. We'll just say resume implementing the jetpack. And if this doesn't wrap up, I mean, AI coding, as we all know, is non-deterministic. So we don't know how long it's going to take to implement. But if it doesn't wrap up before 3, I'll just send you all the links so you can try out the jetpack yourself later. But someone said, if I look at AI versus price comparison, what's good enough intelligence index for day-to-day implementation? I mean, like after doing planning with Anthropic. I think it's a great question. And honestly, at this point, like my experience is that anything new is good enough for day-to-day implementation. It feels like, if you're talking about benchmarks, I'd say, above 70% on SWE bench usually means that it's a very competent model. We're seeing the frontier models push that 80% line for the first time recently with Opus and then GPT 5.2. But yeah, I think, as Brendan mentioned, the benchmarks are important, and it's good to have something objective that you can compare models by. But it really just is your own experience. And I think generally like 70-75% is a really, on SWE bench, is like a really good implementation model. But it all kind of depends on your own experience. And most of these new free models are surpassing that point nowadays. So curious what you think, Brendan.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I think this year we're probably going to see that become more irrelevant. Again, in January of 2025, I wasn't even working at Kilo yet, right? I started Kilo, and Kilo didn't even exist yet. But
Yeah,
in April, I started at Kilo, and it was all about, like the frontier lab, state of the art, are the only models that can handle tool calling, right? And so it's like the like open source models at the time were like really struggling with like agentic engineering completely, because they like couldn't call tools well, and they would error out all the time.
Yep.
And look, tool calling is still not a solved problem in our industry, and we keep adding complexity there. And by we, I mean the royal we, in terms of like the industry and folks trying to like make their own, this is the way tool calling should be.
Yep.
But that's mostly, especially compared to this time last year, mostly a solved problem.
Mhm.
And so I think like we keep, like, to your point, like the gap is just narrowing by the day, it feels like. And so once that gap narrows enough, it's like it's kind of irrelevant, right? And that's why this question comes up. It's like, well, how do I choose the model in that world where the intelligence index kind of becomes irrelevant? It's like, yeah, then you've really got to experiment. And I think you've got to choose a tool that lets you have some freedom to experiment. I think we're going to find that, models are better at certain kinds of development, certain languages, certain, regular tasks versus architecting tasks. We're going to see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And then one last one. We see if this finishes up in time, but I see that a webinar regular, Zane, who also came to one where we chatted live with him, asked, what are our pain points? Like me and you, what are we struggling with while building?
That's a really good question. just before, it's funny because I keep hitting a lot of the same things that, like they say there's only two hard things in software development, and that's naming things, cache invalidation, and off by one errors,
Yeah.
right? And literally right before this call, I was dealing with a cache invalidation problem, and I thought it wasn't, right, like because it was still on my local host.
Yeah.
I like was resurrecting this old page of ours that was gone from the landing page, and I couldn't get it to load because there was a redirect that was getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So then that figured it out. So I think it can be the kind of back and forth and harder engineering things that can still be a struggle for either the models to figure out or me to like figure out a way to guide the model in the right direction. Eventually we got there, but it took way longer than it should have, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing. What about you, Brian? I want to think a little bit more about it, but like I'm interested. What do you think too?
Yeah. So like my day-to-day development tasks are mostly for like fun demos like this and fixing up the Kilo landing page and marketing sort of activities. So I wouldn't consider myself to be like a hardened engineer, but I think my biggest pain point is like keeping up to some degree, like making sure that I'm using the best tools because there's so many good new ones all the time that it can feel like I'm doing something the way I know how to do it, but I'm like, maybe there's a better way. There probably is. So I think like staying informed is one thing. Like we're not in a world where we're at a lack for tools and for ways to reduce friction. It's more of like a fire hose of those things. So like making sure that I'm doing the right thing the right way with everything that I can have access to. And I think shameless shout out to path .kilo.ai. I don't know, Brent, if you want to, I'm just going to unshare my screen real quick and maybe we can show that and then we'll call it. And I'll send this Jetpack Kilo Man in the follow-up email. So you all can
I'll share this out.
with that.
Yeah. So something that I've been thinking about a lot is this, right? And like, again, I think, it's interesting that Brian says he's struggling with that. And I would agree when like, it's kind of our job to do the thing that Brian just said. And so I can only imagine for, your average engineer who is a hardcore engineer, how hard it can be to like figure out how to keep up.
Yeah.
So this like thing that I'm trying to build now, I mean, it's on Kilo.ai because like that's the website I have access to. But my thought is it's going to be as much as possible community driven. It's like just an open source repo right now. But the idea is like, how can we show like what are all the latest things happening? Like trends and patterns is a big page, right? Like people are talking about Ralph Wiggum, right? And it's like, what? Right? If you're not chronically online, like I unfortunately am, you might not understand. And so like, can we give developers like what are all the patterns and trends in AI, and how do I really think about task decomposition when I'm like trying to figure out AI, and like what are the things that I need to think about if I'm a engineer or if I'm a team leader or if I'm an executive. So this is a research, and then it's got some words on the pages, but then it also is like going to have a lot of resources to deep dive into things. And yeah, it's all free and open source, Patrick. Would love folks to check it out and especially contribute things that I'm missing. I just launched it this week. And yeah, like it should include the best of the best, right? Like if there's a paid course that someone made, like we should link, that's great. We should link to it. If there's free courses or videos that I'm missing, I've tried to dive pretty deep in the internet for the stuff that I've found valuable. But yeah, I'd love to no longer be, I'm right now, obviously the number one contributor to this repo. I'd love that to not be true in like a week or two. Because that would mean that like folks really see some value in this, and then value in like sharing in these ideas, and like also making like a central place to come back to and not have to like scroll through Twitter forever to learn something.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're way over time. And I'll send out the Giga Man game later, but just want to quickly say, if you haven't already, join us on Reddit and Discord. We have our engineers there. We have me and Brendan there. We'll always try to respond to everyone that has a question. So they're the QR codes. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thanks to Brendan and Ari for being the guests on the show. And we're doing the Anthropic webinar tomorrow at noon, giving away the $50 of credits to 5 people again, and the t-shirts. And we'll hear from Anthropic team themselves. So yeah, I really appreciate everyone joining, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. All right. Bye, everybody.